When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple courts, he found men selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and others sitting at the tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple area, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned the tables. He's quite angry. To those who sold doves, he said, "Get these out of here. How dare you turn my father's house into a market?" His disciples remembered that it is written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." Then the Jews demanded of him, "What miraculous sign can you show us to prove your authority to do all this?" Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and I will raise it again in 3 days." Jesus replied, "It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you are going to raise it in 3 days?" But the temple he had spoken of was his body. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples recalled what he had said. Then they believed the scriptures and the words that Jesus had spoken. This is the word of our Lord. Thanks be to God. God can be severe at times, quite harsh, brutal. And Jesus seems to show that here. He gets all angry. He loses his temper in the temple. Let's be honest. Jesus usually doesn't lose his anger, does he? He's a pretty even-keeled guy. Even when he was mocked, slapped around, hit, and crucified, he didn't say any curse words. In fact, he was praying pardon for all those enemies of him, which makes this event all the more confusing. Why are you losing your temper in the temple? Over the Jews, the whole life purpose is to keep the temple pure. Context is necessary. Jesus, do you understand why they're there selling the cattle and why they're there exchanging the money? You know why they're selling the cattle? They're selling the cattle so to make the pilgrims who come there to worship in faraway land, to make it easier for them so they can truly worship and not be worried about having to carry the sacrificial animal through that long journey. Historical context. The Jews had 3 major holy days, pilgrim festivals, in which they had to travel to Jerusalem. Of course, not everybody made it, but if you make that long journey, that means that you were there for a real good reason. They were very highly devoted people who would come. But the thing is, the travel was long. It took a long time. Many people, they would take the ship and they would come into, at that time, a city called Jaffa, which is right now part of Tel Aviv. And then from there, the caravan would travel about a day length to Jerusalem. Right now, if you drive, it's just an hour. But back in the days, it was all just by feet, and so it would be a long journey. And can you imagine trying to tote around a sacrificial animal? And you guys know, right? We've been through the book of Leviticus. Like, that list is so detailed and so long, and everything is different according to what type of person you are, what social standing you are, and what type of sacrifice. Can you imagine toting around a sacrificial animal all around? All the sacrificial animals in a boat? Where are they going to go for the bathroom, right? And then if you're from east of Jerusalem, that's walking, that's even longer. And think about it, like a week, even months, people are going that long journey. And even if you travel in a caravan, it was dangerous. You always had the threat of bad weather and thieves. It's just a hard journey to go, just yourself and your family, and to carry on a sacrificial animal. Just, can you imagine? You're walking and you have 3 kids, and you know how the journey is with kids, right? They're always asking, right, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" And in the midst of all that, you still have to worry about the animal. And of course, it has to be undefiled. It has to be without blemishes. But what can you do? There's so many accidents that could happen during that such a long journey. What if the goat goes and he, breaks his ankle or something? Then, oh my goodness, you're worthless. Right? What do you do then? So what happened was the leader said, look, they're traveling such a long journey. Let's really make it easy for them. They don't have to carry the sacrificial animal. And besides, they might be confused. Most of them are not even literate, so they probably don't even read the book of Leviticus, and so they don't even know what to do. So let's help them out. Great intention. Really. So They will come into the south gate, and then they will go about 3 stories height length of a staircase, and they'll go through the Huldah gates, which will lead you to the Gentile court. And there, as it says, even Gentiles could come. And that's where this event happened. And yes, they had a sense of being a bazaar and a market. They even sell souvenirs. They always sell souvenirs anywhere. And there, of course, was this team of rabbis and teachers who would say, okay, this is where you are, and this type of sacrifice, and you would need this animal. And they would buy the sacrificial animal right there, and guaranteed to be unblemished. Those were good reasons, good intentions. Why are you getting so upset at this, Jesus? These Jews, their life purpose is to keep the temple pure. You should get angry at the Gentiles, the uncircumcised people. They're the ones who constantly try to defile the temple, don't understand the meaning of the temple and how important it is to the community. They're the ones who keep defiling it. Why are you getting angry at them? And the money exchange too. This was to keep the offering money that was coming into the temple to be pure currency. You see, because the Roman currency, they had engraven images, the emperors. And to give that will be like idolatry. There's only one God. Caesar's Lord. Wait a minute. And so they said, we can't accept this. Jews did not have the authority to print their own money. So what they would do is they would exchange this Roman currency for Tyrian currency, which the Jews declared kosher. So it wasn't like they were trying to make profit out of it. Right? High exchange rate makes some profit. But they wanted to keep it pure. The worshipers, when they give the offering, they will feel pure. I'm giving pure offering. Now, why you get angry at them? They just want to help the Jews worship as much as they could with the purity of heart. You should get angry at the uncircumcised people, the Gentiles who really try to defile the temple. Like in 167, Antiochus, who was emperor of the Seleucid Empire, you know what he did? He wanted to erect a statue of Zeus in the temple. That's one thing he wanted to do. Secondly, he banned circumcision. And thirdly, he wanted to slaughter and sacrifice a pig in the temple. You talk about a mean guy. He said, what's the 3 worst things that Jews hate? Okay, let's do them all at the same time. And these Jews, their whole purpose in life is to keep the temple pure. Zeal for the house of the Lord, they had it too. And so they rose up and they fought. And to the surprise, they won. The Maccabean revolt. They defeated a larger and a stronger army. And they established the Hasmonean kingdom. Short-lived, but an inspiring kingdom. Out of that birth of a revolution, we have Hanukkah. These Jews, they had a zeal for the house of the Lord too. They don't want to defile it. They're fighting with their life. They're risking life to keep it pure. Pontius Pilate. So this was probably around even Jesus' time. Pontius Pilate, he did 2 dumb things. Or maybe he was just that mean too. One night he tried to, sneaky way, bring in the Roman standards and put it into the temple. Oh, that's idolatry. And when Jews heard of it, they protested so loudly and so threateningly that Pilate had to relent. And then another time he said, I'm going to make the city a cleaner city. And so he was going to use the temple money to build an aqueduct. It's for the city, right? I mean, the Jewish people will love it. But the Jewish people rose up in protest. They said, no, that's God's money. You can't touch God's money like that, even if it's for the city. And Pilate relented. These people, these Jews, they're not ones who are trying to make profit. I mean, God's money is God's money. We can't even use it in the city. It's their mentality. Jesus, you are getting angry at the wrong crowd. They're trying to keep this temple pure. And so you can understand why these leaders would go so upset. And it was a Passover feast too, right? Again, so many people are gathered here. And they were excited. It was a high religious holy day. And it was a time when they would celebrate the freedom and the liberation from the oppression, political oppression of the Egyptians and the creation of the nation of Israel. And of course, there was some good social reason why they should be happy. When they got there, some of these country folks, maybe it was the first time in the city and they were wowed by it, especially the Herod's temple. beautiful, humongous. You could see for miles. And then maybe some of them, it was an opportunity to reconnect with some of their relatives who still live in Jerusalem. Or maybe some of them were reconnected with friends that they had met before in the previous pilgrims. So out of all this excitement, why are you causing a commotion, Jesus? Why are you getting all upset about offering sacrificial animals and about exchanging the money so it becomes pure currency? He goes around turning the table, making a whip out of the courts, and especially he has something against the doves, right? People who were selling doves, he's more angry at them. And so the Jewish leader comes and says, what are you doing? What authority do you have to do this? You're not educated. You're not even a disciple of a rabbi that we recognize. You're not appointed a priest. Why do you do this? You don't even know who's your own teammate. You don't even know who to get angry at. Why are you doing this? And then Jesus says, destroy this temple. Whew. Those were incendiary words. Especially at the time, right? Under the political oppression, where they saw Rome as a threat to their way of life and a threat to the temple. Here's Jesus, their own kind, a Jew saying, destroy the temple. We were trying to keep the temple, and now you say destroy it? In this time where everyone was sensitive, everyone was looking for a Messiah, destroy the temple? Just kill all your hope and dreams? It'd be kind of like, like maybe a few days after 9/11, you say to your friend, maybe you just joke around, oh yeah, I'm going to go destroy the Empire State Building. As soon as you say that, 20 cops will be on you. They'll go through emails because it's a sensitive time. And here's Jesus saying, destroy the temple. And I will rebuild it in 3 days. Oh, wow. It's like offense after offense and offense, like rip, turn the tables, destroy, and 3 days I'll rebuild it. Hey, you know how long it took? It took 46 years to renovate the second temple. And you saying 3 days? Think about that. That's an affront. It's kind of like you go to your supervisor and you've done a project for a year and you've done your report and you present it, and then your supervisor looks at it, throws it at your feet and says, I could have done it in a day. I was like, I'm quitting. 3 days, 46 years. You know how much love and labor and money went into this temple? In fact, it probably took more than 46 years. Right? The first temple, Solomon's temple, was destroyed, razed by the Babylonians in 586. And that really destroyed the community. Many of us thought that was the end. Until, of course, Daniel read the Bible and realized the promise of God and started praying. And Nehemiah takes the people and goes back to Jerusalem. And it's King Cyrus, the great of the Persian Empire, he reestablished the city and gives a permit to rebuild the temple. And they begin to rebuild it at around 538. And even that took a long time, 20 years, 518, 517. There was enemies who were opposing it, and different policies changing back and forth, even internal fights, who would be the priest. So many setbacks, but they finally got the second temple. So if you want to really count it, it's from that time, the second temple. And that had a lot of threats. I just mentioned to you Antiochus what he tried to do, right? Kill a pig in the temple. They were able to survive that. And then King Herod comes, and around 19 BC, he says a new project. He says, we're going to renovate it. Now, he didn't do it because he was such a great Jew. This guy had no conscience. He killed his mother and his 2 sons just so he could keep his throne. But he wanted his name to last long. So let's call it Herod's temple, and I'll make it the wonder of the world. And he did. It was huge. It was big, beautiful. And they were proud of it. At least it was their temple. Even under this Roman oppression, they had one of the wonders of the world. They could compete with the Colosseum. It was humongous. You could see from miles. And Jesus goes, destroy it. 3 days, I'll redo it. Jesus, why are you getting angry at your own teammates, at your own family members? You know what the worst part of that is? They had prophets before who talked about how God would destroy the temple because the people of God had defiled it. Mainly, Jeremiah did the same thing. Oh, you come, you say, this is the house of the Lord, this is the house of the Lord, but you defile it by the way you live. And Babylon will come and will destroy the temple because you've defiled it. And God will purify the land by getting rid of you. And when Jesus says destroy it, they're hearing the same thing. We stood up against Pilate, we stood up against Antiochus, and you're saying destroy it because we have defiled it? We're defiling it by making the sacrifice a little bit easier. We're defiling it by purifying the currency so people don't give money with engraven images. Is it possible that we could be fighting for God and end up fighting against God? This is like God saying to the church, you are more worldly than the world. It'd be like a victim who, suffered and a sin has been committed against her, and she's praying, God, forgive me. And God says, you have also sinned. What? But is it possible that even victims can become perpetrators? Is it possible that in my fight for purity of the church doctrine that I betray the fundamental principles of loving your neighbor? Is it possible that everybody thinks that I'm a great person and I have this holy character, but be a hypocrite inside? Is it possible? Is it possible for me to be successful in the career, but be a failure at home? Be a great leader, but be a terrible and lousy husband and dad? Is it possible? Yes. Yeah. You could be going up against the armies of Rome and defile the temple that you're protecting. And that's the lesson of the Passover, isn't it? When you think about the Passover, it is not so much judgment against the Egyptian masters and, of course, freedom from the Israelite slaves. Actually, the judgment was on every human being. That's why it's Passover. God didn't pass over the Israelites because they were slaves, they were victims, they were people of God, and they were not under the judgment because they were pure. No. The only reason why God's judgment passed over a house was if the house had brushed the blood of the lamb on the doorpost. That's the Passover. Everyone is under the judgment of God. The Lent, when you think about it, it's not so much a way for me to get holier. It's good, and that's what we're doing, and I will continue to do it. But I think the main lesson of the Lent is to realize how weak you are. Right? Yes, it develops good, positive habits, but even as you develop those positive habits, don't you feel like, wow, how weak am I? Like when you're doing all these Lent fasts, do you find yourself being more irascible than before the Lent fast? Do you find that you are less, kind and patient than before you did Lent fast because you're giving up all this stuff? Like Dave Gibbons talks about how he did a 40 days fast, and he thought that if I did 40 days fast at the end of it, some time in that period, right, that he will get over a hump, and then he will be overcome his physical needs, and all he will be thinking about is spiritual things. And he will overcome the need for the hunger and food thought. But what he realized was, as the days went, he was able to pray less and less and less, because every time he closed his eyes, he was thinking about food. After a while, even when he opened his eyes, all he saw was food. At the end of the 40th day, he was thinking about God. He was thinking about, God, this is going to be over, and I'm going to eat. And he said the lesson that he learned from the fasting was, I am weak. I am weak. As we give up these things, what we realize is that, all those things that we prided ourselves of, like, we are good people, we realize that it's only these small little things, whether it be coffee, whether it be meat, whether it be TV, it's only these little things that kept us sane. It wasn't me. It wasn't me that made me, be a good person in the community. It was these little things that kind of propped me up. And when even those small things are taken away, I realized, man, I'm a pretty tough guy to be with. I'm doing a fast, a really small fast. I'm doing 1 lunch a week, okay? That's all it is. But even that day, I get worried, like in the morning, like, man, I gotta eat a big breakfast. Honey, scramble like 4 eggs for me. And then lunch comes, and I'm praying, and it's not too bad. I pray, but then, of course, you could hear the stomach growl. Right? And then when I get home, I don't want to play with my kids because I'm tired, I'm hungry. But then they clamor, Dad, da, 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 da. And then I'm angry, but I don't get angry at them. Not because I got holier through the fasting, but because I have no energy. And then I realized, man, just one meal, missing just one meal changes the whole day for me. My attitude, how I do things. I'm weak. I need a real cleaning, a real purification. That's what Christ's saying. Yes, you need cleaning, a real purification. You know how we do it? We destroy it. We judge it completely. What does this mean? Some people in the history of Christianity, they take a literal like this. Origen, great Christian father, original thinker, and he said, he had a lot of this. He was struggling with lust, and how do I get rid of it? And the sense of cut off your right arm, left arm, right? Destroy whatever caused you to sin. So he took it literally and he castrated himself. And after he castrated himself, you know what he found out? He was still having lustful thoughts. So it's not even just about me being severe with myself. It's being no matter how much I discipline and control my body, even at the end, you and I, we are selfish sinners. And we come under the judgment of God. But that's the good news. If we come under the judgment of God and we accept that we are judged by God, then it frees us to receive God's grace. Think about this. Judgment was passed over with only over the doors that had the lamb's blood. Now, who would mark that? What type of people would put the blood lamp on the door? People who believed, oh, God doesn't judge me. I'm okay. Would they have put it there? Only those people who knew they were under the judgment of God put it there. Put that lamb's blood. Only those who know that they are judged, they are terrible sinners, can receive the grace of God. It purifies us in that sense, destroying every self-righteousness. I don't have any righteousness of my own. I am not better than anybody in this community. I'm not better than anybody outside this community or even a person out there doing some terrible sin. I am not any better. You know what that does? It frees us to receive God's grace, and it frees us simply to do what I'm called to do. Because if we think that we have to get to a place so then God's judgment can pass over. If it's up to me, then I'm always trying to do things and I'm always questioning, is this good enough? Is this good enough? Is this good? How can you live your life always asking, is this good enough? I preached, is this good enough? I prayed, is this good enough? I'm being kind, I'm forgiving, is this good enough? Is this good enough? You can't. Even after the retreat, when the retreat was done, I went to one of the members' house and I was asking myself, is this good enough? Did I really preach with pure intention? But then I remember this message, forget that. I did my best, but I know that even this is on the judgment of God. So God, forgive that I didn't do it with a pure heart and accept it. And I'm just going to continue to do what I can do. It frees you, doesn't it? Pray what you can pray. Preach what you can preach. Or care what you can care. And stop asking, is it good enough? Because you know what? It's not good enough. You're still under judgment. Hallelujah. But Christ's blood, you mark your heart with it. And the judgment of God passes over you. Clark Petrapol, he was a captain of a tank team. He was a commander of hundreds plus soldiers and about 55 tanks. in the Iraq War. And he's a Christian. He grew up in the church. And in Iraq, he realized that he has to do more of this spiritual disciplines if he's going to remain rooted. And so every morning he would do an hour of prayer. But it was in one of those battles in Fallujah that he had a moment of great revelation. A car bomb, a terrorist, had rammed his car bomb against one of the tanks. But thankfully, the bomb didn't blow up. The detonator didn't go. And so he drove his tank a little closer to see what's happening. And he saw the detonator didn't blow, but there was a driver, a terrorist, who tried to kill them, his enemy, his mortal enemy, knocked unconscious. And now he had to make a decision. Does he go to help? And from a humanity perspective, he felt like he should. But then, what if he wakes up and he blows the detonator? Then he will put everybody at risk. And so then he called the EOD, the bomb squad, right? And they came and they were trying to just, from a far distance, trying to just get rid of the detonator, blow up the detonator without blowing the bomb. But something went wrong, and actually the gasoline caught on fire. And so now this car was in fire, and the blazing inferno was consuming it from the back. And as this was going, he was close enough to see the driver, his mortal enemy tried to kill him. He woke up for a second when the heat was so strong. He rolled out of the car. Then he lost his consciousness. And then continuously, as the fire was going closer and closer to the bomb, he would regain his consciousness, roll a little, try to get away, and then lose his consciousness and fall back. And he was thinking to himself, do I go help him? If I do help him, then am I putting people at risk? And these were his words and what he thought at that moment. There was a moment I could have saved him. I could have jumped down from my tank, run the 100 meters to the car, and carry him to safety. But what if he had a gun? What if he woke up and tried to fight me? I knew that if a struggle broke out, we wouldn't be able to get back to cover. We would both die. I wasn't willing to die for my enemy. I wasn't willing. So I instructed my soldiers to stay clear of the car. No rescue was to be attempted. It was too dangerous. I didn't want anyone dying to try to save this man. The man lay crawling in the street, fighting off death. He lifted his head, searching for a soul, willing to rescue an enemy, but no one came. The bomb exploded. The dust settled. I sprinted up to his body. A dark crimson painted the sand beneath him. I could have saved him, but I didn't. I was glad he was dead. He was my enemy. I wasn't willing to risk my life for a man sworn to kill me. But as I watched his life drain into the desert, a thought penetrated my heart. I deserve death. I lived my whole life in open rebellion toward God. I never set off an IED or rammed a car bomb into anybody's tank, but in God's eyes, my rebellion still deserved death. Maybe I wasn't worse. I wasn't any worse than any other man, but neither was this terrorist any worse than any other terrorist. But death was still his just end. That was me. My sin deserved death, but Jesus took the penalty for me. While I was still a sinner, still an enemy of God, he spilled his crimson blood instead of mine. He paid the price for me. He let me live when I deserved to die, like a terrorist lying in the street. What he realized at that moment, even in the midst of that moral confusion, he deserved to die. He deserved the same judgment. And so he recognized finally the depth of God's grace. Friends, every one of us here deserve the judgment of God. Would you receive the blood of the Lamb? Let's close our eyes. Just a minute.